if you're to graph an equality like j is equal to -2, you simply graph that by putting a solid dot at -2. This is the value of j. J is exactly -2. To graph an inequality like p is greater than or equal to -2, you have to consider what this variable p, what could it be? If it's greater than or equal to -2, it could be 5. It could be 3. 3 is greater than or equal to -2. It could be -2 because -2 is equal to -2. It could be 0.5. It could be 0.6, 0.7. It could be any value greater than -2, or it could be -2. So you graph an inequality by graphing an endpoint like -2 and then an arrow showing all the possible values. It could be anywhere from -2 all the way up to infinity. It could be a million. A million is greater than or equal to -2 because a million is greater than -2. So a graph of an inequality shows all the possible values of the variable. And since -2 is equal, or p could be exactly -2, we put a solid dot at -2. Z is less than 3. So any negative number is less than 3. Any negative number, certainly 0 is less than 3. 1 is less than 3, 1.5 is less than 3. All of these values are less than 3. But the tricky part is all the values, like 2.9 is less than 3. 2.95 is less than 3. 2.99 is less than 3. So how do you show that it goes all the way up to the 3 but doesn't include the 3? You show that with an open circle. That open circle shows the person reading your graph that z could be any value less than 3, but it could not be equal to 3. The open circle is the notation for that. And by the way, I've been showing this long arrow, but you could very easily show, I could make my arrow this short. Because if it's an arrow, if it's a ray going to the left, it means it goes to the left infinitely. So the length of the arrow means nothing. I mean, typically we'd show it a little longer than that, but I just want you to know that it doesn't matter how long it is, as long as it's going in the right direction. And in this case, since z cannot equal 3 exactly, we have an open circle at 3. So as long as we're on the subject of arrows or rays extending infinitely in a specific direction, you can see that the number line itself has arrows on either end, as you would expect for any line, extending infinitely in both directions. So what's the greatest value? If you follow this line all the way to the right, the greatest value is positive infinity. The least value, if you go all the way to the left, these negative numbers, they get smaller and smaller. They look like they get bigger and bigger, but since they're opposites, they get smaller and smaller, and you would end up at negative infinity. So the possible values of z are any number less than 3 all the way to negative infinity. The inequality m is not equal to 2 could be any value. It just can't be positive 2. So you put an open circle at positive 2. You would need an arrow to the right to show that any value greater than 2, m could be greater than 2, and an arrow to the left to show that m could also be any value less than 2. Sometimes this is shown as a compound inequality. M is less than 2 and greater than 2. But it's much easier to just say m is not equal to 2. Just know that it's graphed this way. It could be any value, it just can't be 2. Can't be 2 exactly.